Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in AP English, and we turn now in our study of Iliad to book number 5. Diomedes Fights the Gods is the way that Robert Fagles will kind of highlight this book. It is a fascinating book for us. Now, just to remind, if you haven't been following my earlier lectures, hitlearnstrong.net, we've already reviewed Iliad 1, the invocation to the Muse, the fight between Achilles and Agamemnon. Book 2, Agamemnon's kind of rough dream because he's sent a bad dream by Zeus that says the Greeks will take Troy today. And as well, we have the catalog of the ships. You'll remember Book 3, that's the contest between Paris and Menelaus. And by the end of it, we think that the war is over. And Book 4, the book we just got finished with talking about, here we have, of course, Zeus versus Hera. We have Pandarus, the great archer, who is going to cause the problem again, and all of a sudden, by the end of Book 4, we're back into the war. We've got all kinds of nasty conflicts that are going on. You'll remember Book 4 was a book about a lot of the fighting that's going to begin to happen in the Iliad. We've often called this a poem of death, and we'll know why, especially after Book 5. Now, the hope again here is that you've already read Book 5 and that you're doing annotative work on your own and that you're coming to my then lectures to help you. Just to remind, our learning theory is that goal to connect new information to old information in meaningful ways. We're working again with the 3 levels of reading, answering our 3 guiding questions. At level 1, what does the text say? We're summarizing. At level 2, what does the text mean? Here, 2A, messages, themes, 2B, rhetoric. Just to remind, we're concentrating at 2B on symbolism and important ironies in the text. We could obviously do a whole lot more, and sometimes we'll dip in to say other things. At level 3, we answer the question, how can I relate to this text? At 3A, it'll relate to prior books of the Iliad and then other texts as well. And then finally in 3B, and most importantly, how can I relate this information to myself in some way? Now, let's do a really a quick study of Book 5, beginning with a Greek word. Okay? Because we're often going to call this the book of Diomedes, aristeia. It's a Greek word that just simply means scene type, especially of the hero and his fighting. It can be just a few lines, or it can be an entire book long, or even, as in the case of the Iliad with Achilles at the end of the Iliad, several books long, right? We're going to have Diomedes in this book, who is going to be an unbelievable fighting hero. And then in between, we're going to have other kinds of contests going on, all right? The gods are going to get involved in this book 1 as well. We're going to see Aphrodite, and we're going to see Ares, who will get wounded. So right away, we'll turn. Let's go to the opening lines of this book, number 5, and let's begin to just enjoy some of the language right away. Then, we're told, Pallas Athena granted Tydeus' son Diomedes strength and daring, so the fighter would shine forth and tower over the Argives and win himself great glory. We'll remember that kleos, that word we were working with before. She set the man ablaze. There's a lot of fire imagery in the Iliad, so begin to point that out at level 2B for yourself. She set the man ablaze, his shield and helmet flaming with tireless fire like the star that flames at harvest, bathed in the ocean, rising up to outshine all other stars. Sure fire Athena blazed from Diomedes' head and shoulders, drove him into the center where the masses struggled on. Right away then, we're going to begin with key fights. By the way, make a note to yourself, one of the interesting motifs of this book, and then throughout the Iliad, is the number 2. So you're going to have, for example, 2 sons that maybe will fight or die. 2 friends, 2 brothers in the form of twins, 2 gods often. So there's a lot of that kind of pairing off that's going to happen, okay? And then right away, we're going to have some conversation between the gods. The gods are going to play a very controversial role in Book 5. And of course, this is setting us up. We read the first few books of the Iliad to get ready to read the last books of the Iliad, and we're going to see this already, the role of the gods. So we have, for example, Athena, who will speak to the great god of war, Ares. I'm at line roughly 29-30. And now, despite their courage, the Trojan fighters, seeing the 2 sons of Darius, one on the run, one dead beside his chariot, all their hearts were stunned. But Athena's eyes bright, taking Ares in hand, called the violent god away with, Ares, Ares, destroyer of men, reeking blood, stormer of ramparts, why not let these mortals fight it out for themselves? Let Zeus give glory to either side he chooses. We'll stay clear and escape the Father's rage. Nothing could be more ironic than these lines. Athena speaking to Ares, why don't you stay out of it? We'll all stay out of it. And of course, that's exactly what will not happen. Right away, we've got some major fighters that will begin. And I don't have time. As I've said in all my other lectures, dude, I wish I could just read the entire book to you and exegete as I go. I just don't have the time to do it. So we're going to have to skip. Agamemnon's going to fight. Diomedes then will kill. Menelaus then will have his killing. And then Myronides will be our next one at line 71 and following. Caught quickly his Pericles, who he's going to kill. Caught him quickly, running him down hard and speared him low on the right buttock. The point pounding under the pelvis, jabbed and pierced the bladder. He dropped to his knees, screaming, death swirling around him. I only use this as one example of many that I could give to you of the ways in which we've got killing going on. We've got Megas next, who will kill Pedius, and I'm at line 80 or so. Megas gave him, Pedius, some close attention to. The famous spearman struck behind his skull, just at the neck cord, the razor spear slicing straight up through the jaws, cutting away the tongue. He sunk in the dust, teeth clenching the cold bronze. So you can kind of see where we're at here, right? Okay, our next great Greek fighter, Eurypylus, and then finally we will meet Diomedes again on the field of battle at line 93 or so. So they worked away in the rough assaults, but Diomedes, which side was the fighter on? You could not tell. Did he rampage now with the Trojans or with the Argives, the Greeks? Down the plain he stormed like a stream. Notice all the epic similes here. Like a stream in spate, a routing winter torrent sweeping away the dikes. The tight pile dikes can't hold it back any longer. Banks shoring the blooming vineyards cannot curb its course. A flash flood bursts as the rains from Zeus pour down their power. Acre on acre, the well-dug work of farmers crumbling under it. A classic epic simile. It goes on for a number of lines. Poetically a way to say Diomedes is like raising absolute Cain, just like a terrible bunch of water. So Tydides' force, the Trojan columns panicked now, no standing their ground, massed, packed as they were. So the Trojans are just going to like freak out, right? We then will have Pandarus, who we already met in the previous book. He's the one that, of course, started all this restart of the war again with his shooting of his stupid arrow at Menelaus. And he then were ready to meet with Diomedes at lines 115 or so. Bragging, so he's bragging. But the whizzing arrow he shoots at Diomedes, had not brought Diomedes down. Diomedes just drew back beside his car and team and stood there calling Cynthius, his friend. And he says to Cynthius, quick, Cynthius, down from the car, my friend, pull this wretched arrow from my shoulder. So in other words, Diomedes, dude, he gets shot by an arrow. He's not ready to go back behind the lines and have medical attention. He's ready to keep fighting, but first pull the arrow out of my arm, right? And then Diomedes, just a few lines later, will pray aloud. Hear me, daughter of Zeus. So he calls out to Athena, whose shield is thunder, tireless one Athena. If you ever stood by my father in all your love amidst the blaze of battle, stand by me. Do me a favor now, Athena. Bring that man, Pandarus, right, into range and let me spear him. He's wounded me off guard, and now he triumphs. He boasts, I won't look long on the light of day. So Diomedes prayed, and Athena heard his prayer, but put spring in the limbs, his feet, his fighting hands, and close beside him weaned him on with a flight of orders. By the way, Athena to Ares, let's stay out of the war. Yeah, you see how long that lasted, right? And now she says to him, now take heart, Diomedes. Fight it out with the Trojans deep in your chest. I put your father's strength. This thing about fathers and sons, you're going to see this all the way through the Iliad, right? He never quaked. That Tydeus, that great horseman, what force the famous shieldsman used to wield. Look, I've lifted the mist from off your eyes that's blurred them up to now. So you can tell a god from man on sight. So now, if a god comes up to test your mettle, you must not fight that immortal powers head on, but all but one of the deathless gods. That is, if Aphrodite, daughter of Zeus, slips into battle, she's the one to stab with your sharp bronze spear. Well, two interesting things here. It's all about sight. When we get to our lectures on Plato's Republic, we'll begin to play that game again with perspicacity, sight versus outsight versus insight. Notice here she says, I'm going to give you a special kind of sight so you can actually see the gods. Don't mess with the gods, except for Aphrodite. Dude, if you get a chance to jack Aphrodite, do it. Athena, of course, has her problems with Aphrodite. Why? The judgment of Paris, of course. She didn't get the golden apple and Aphrodite did, right? So we will have then this prayer, and now Diomedes can see gods. And then just the listing starts to happen. We got really quickly 8 people right away that he will kill. Asthonius, Hyperion, he's got a couple of brothers in Abas and Polydorus that he'll kill. More brothers in Xanthos and Theon, and then another set of brothers in Ecdion and Chiaromos. So you've got these brothers that he kills, and he's just continuing now to just kill. And then we have the introduction of the great Trojan warrior Aeneas. So let's put this in our notes really quickly. Already at 3.8 we're making some observations. Aeneas will be the great hero of Virgil's poem, the Aeneid. And we'll see Aeneas a few times in our poem. Here we will see Aeneas as well. I'm at lines about 185 or so. Smashing the lines of fighters now is Diomedes, but Aeneas marked it all, and oblivious to the rain of spears, he waded in, hunting for Pandarus. Pandarus is going to have the major conflict here in a second. Hoping to find the archer. Find him he did, Laukion, skilled, fearless son, and went right up and challenged him to his face. Now put it in your notes. We're going to have this a lot in the Iliad, especially in this book, where a fighter will challenge another fighter. You got to do better. And sometimes it's taken as insult, but most of the time it's taken as you're right, you're right, you're right. I should do better, right? So here we go. Pandarus, he says, where's your bow, your winged arrows, your archer's glory? No Trojan, your rival here. No Lycian can claim to be your better. No, so up with you now. Lift your hands to Zeus. You whip an arrow against that man. Of course, you know, the great Diomedes, right? Whoever he is, who routs us, wreaking havoc against us, cutting the legs from under squads of good brave men. Unless it's a god who smolders at our troops, enraged at a right we failed. When a god's enraged, there's thunder at our heads. And in the next lines to come, Pandarus kind of gets the sense that he's about to die. So he says at line 215, it is some god rampaging. And then he will in fact take his shot, right? And it will be for Pandarus. He'll be like, dude, what is the problem? I cannot knock down Menelaus. I can't knock down either Diomedes. He says it already. He says, I was trusting my bows and my bows and my arrows at line 230 and following. A lot of good I was to get from them. Speaking ironically, already I've let fly at 2 of their best men, Diomedes and Menelaus. I've hit them both, and the blood gushed from both direct hits, but I only roused their fury. What bad luck to snatch this curved bow off its peg that day. I marched my Trojans hard to your lovely town of Troy to please Prince Hector. Pandarus is from another place, not Troy. But if I get home again and set my eyes on my native land, this is ironic because he's about to die, my wife and my fine house with a high vaulting roof, let some stranger cut off my head then and there. If I don't smash this bow and fling it in the fire, the gear I packed is worthless as the wind. In other words, he's saying, once I'm done with this fighting. Aeneas, the Trojan captain, checked him sharply. No talk of turning for home. No turning the tide till we wheel and face this man with team and car and fight it out with weapons hand to hand. Come up with you now. Climb aboard my chariot. Right. And so then you've got this exchange between the two. The next part of our poem then will be the famous fight between Diomedes and Pandarus at lines 311 and following. Shaft poised, he hurled, and its long shadow flew and struck Diomedes' shield. The brazen spearhead winging, drilling right on through to his breastplate. Pandarus yelling over him wildly, "You're hit clear through the side. You won't last long, I'd say. Now the glory's mine." But never shaken, staunch Diomedes shot back, "No hit. You missed. But the 2 of you shall never quit this fight, I'd say, till one of you drops and dies and gluts with blood Ares, who hacks at men behind his rawhide shield." With that, Diomedes hurled, and Athena drove the shaft, and it split the archer's nose between the eyes. He hits Pandarus. It cracked his glistening teeth, The tough bronze cut off his tongue at the roots, smashed his jaw, and the point came ripping out beneath his chin. He pitched him from his car. Armor clanged against him. So, yeah, it's now all of a sudden, Diomedes had said earlier that he wanted to fight so that he could gain Aeneas' horses, because Aeneas has these amazing horses. He didn't get a chance at the time, but he does get to kill Pandarus. And then we've got Aeneas, who is going to protect the body. This idea of protecting the body of the fallen comrade is huge. So Aeneas now, we're told at line 330, sprang down with his shield and heavy spear, fearing the Argives might just drag away the corpse somehow, somewhere. Aeneas straddled the body, proud in his fighting power, like some lion, shielded the corpse with spear and round buckler, burning to kill off any man who met him face to face, and he loosed a blood-curdling cry, just as Diomedes hefted a boulder in his hands. Now, it's fascinating. A lot of students are amazed that when they read the Iliad for the first time, how many times people get jacked by rocks and boulders. You're out there fighting, you don't have a weapon, or you do even, and you pick up a rock and you throw it. And this is exactly what happens. A tremendous feat. No two men could hoist it, so Diomedes is strong enough he can pick up this huge boulder. Obviously, Athena is helping him. Wreck as men are now, we're told, it's a tremendous feat to pick this up. No two men could hoist it, weak as men are now. But all on his own he raised it high with ease and flung it and struck Aeneas' thigh, where the hip bone turns into the pelvis, the joint they call the cup. It smashed the socket, snapped both tendons too, and the jagged rock tore back the skin in shreds. The great fighter sank to his knees, bracing himself with one strong forearm planted against the earth, and the world went black as night before his eyes. So Diomedes wounds Aeneas. Aphrodite, the mother of Aeneas, will save Aeneas, right? And it will be then Diomedes' pal, Sthenelus, who will get Aeneas' horses, all right? And then Diomedes will go hunting then for, because he can see her, Aphrodite. And we're now at lines 375 and following. But once Diomedes caught her, Aphrodite, stalking through the onslaught, gallant Diomedes' offspring rushed her. Lunging out, thrusting his sharp spear at her soft limp wrist, the brazen point went slashing through her flesh, tearing straight through the fresh, immortal robes. So in other words, this is how Diomedes is so crazed with war. He even attacks a goddess, Aphrodite, and he wounds her, right? He gouged her just where the wrist bone joins the palm, and immortal blood came flowing quickly from the goddess, the ichor. That's God's bloods, right? That courses through their veins, the blessed gods. They eat no bread, the gods. They drink no shining wine, and so the gods are bloodless. So we call them deathless. A piercing shriek, she reeled and dropped her son, Aeneas. And Phobos Apollo plucked him up. So Aeneas is saved by Apollo in his hands and swamped him around in a swirling dark mist, for fear some Argive fast with chariot team might hurl bronze in his chest and rip his life out. But Diomedes shouted after Aphrodite, shattering war cries. "Daughter of Zeus," he screams, "give up the war, your lust for carnage, so it's not enough that you lure defenseless women to their ruin." We're thinking obviously of Helen. "Haunting the fighting, are you? Now I think you'll cringe at the hint of war if you get wind of battle far away." Right? So Aphrodite is wounded. She flees. She goes to Ares and she asks for some help. She runs to her mommy, Dion, and she will fall into her lap at lines 415. The deathless Aphrodite sank in Dion's lap, and her mother, folding her daughter in her arms, stroked her gently, whispered her name, and asked, "Who has abused you now, dear child? Tell me, who of the sons of heaven so unfeeling, cruel? Why, it's as if they had caught you in public doing something wrong." The ironies, of course, are just amazing here, right? You've got a goddess in Aphrodite who started all this mess with the judgment of Paris, remember? And of course, now she's whining and crying because she got a little scratch on her wrist. The ironies, of course, that men are slaughtering each other by, shoving poles through each other's faces, and she's whining about a little tiny, a little scratch. And Aphrodite, who loves eternal laughter, sobbed in answer, "The son of Thetis stabbed me, Diomedes, that overweening insolent, all because I was bearing off my son from the fighting. Aeneas, dearest to me of all men alive, look down. It's no longer ghastly war for Troy and Achaia now, I tell you. The Argives fight the gods. Dion, the light and loveliest of immortals, tried to calm her. Patience, O my child. Bear up now, despite your heart-sick grief. How many gods who hold the halls of Olympus have had to endure such wounds from mortal men whenever they try to cause each other pain? And then you got this really interesting kind of listing of different types of gods who have been injured over the years of history by men. And then she finishes by pointing out roughly line 463 or so on. But the man who attacked you, the greatest goddess, fiery-eyed Athena, set him on, that fool. Doesn't the son of Tydeus know? Right down, deep down. The man who fights the gods does not live long, nor do his children right his knees, who cries of father, home at last from the wars and heat of battle. So now let Diomedes, powerful as he is, be on his guard, for fear a better soldier than you engage him. In other words, this idea is you can fight the gods, but you're going to pay in the end. By the way, this fighting of the gods reminds us of a line from Tennyson's classic Ulysses, right? Where he will, in fact, make some observation about how fighting of the gods is something that they have done. My mariners' souls that have toiled and wrought and fought with me, that ever with a frolic welcome took the thunder and the sunshine and opposed free hearts, free foreheads. You and I are old age hath yet its honor and its toil. Death closes all, but something ere the end, some work of noble note may yet be done, not unbecoming men that strove with gods. Certainly Tennyson is thinking about Iliad 5 when he has a set of lines like that. That idea of striving against the gods, against something that's impossible, and yet you're going to do it anyway, right?